This is a timeline of the conclusion of the American Civil War, which includes important battles, skirmishes, raids and other events of 1865. These led to additional Confederate surrenders, key Confederate captures, and disbandments of Confederate military units that occurred after General Robert E. Lee's surrender on April 9, 1865. 1. The fighting of the Eastern Theater of the American Civil War between Lieutenant General Ulysses S. Grant's Army of the Potomac and Lee's Army of Northern Virginia was reported considerably more often in the newspapers than the battles of the Western Theater. Reporting of the Eastern Theater skirmishes largely dominated the newspapers as the Appomattox Campaign developed too. Lee's army fought a series of battles in the Appomattox Campaign against Grant that ultimately stretched thin his lines of defense. Lee's extended lines were mostly on small sections of 30 miles of strongholds around Richmond and Petersburg, Virginia. His troops ultimately became exhausted defending this line because they were too thinned out. Grant then took advantage of the situation and launched attacks on this 30-mile-long poorly defended front. This ultimately led to the surrender of Lee and the Army of Northern Virginia at Appomattox 2. The Army of Northern Virginia surrendered on April 9 around noon, followed by General St. John Richardson Little's troops some 6 hours later. 2 Mosby's raiders disbanded on April 21. General Joseph E. Johnston and his various armies surrendered on April 26. The Confederate departments of Alabama, Mississippi and East Louisiana surrendered on May 4. And the Confederate District of the Gulf, commanded by Major General Dabney Herndon Maury, surrendered on May 5. 3 Confederate President Jefferson Davis was captured on May 10, along with the Confederate departments of Florida and South Georgia, commanded by Confederate Major General Samuel Jones. 4 Also on May 10 U.S. President Andrew Johnson declared the rebellions. Armed resistance virtually ended. 5 Thompson's brigade surrendered on May 11. Confederate forces of North Georgia surrendered on May 12, and Kirby Smith surrendered on May 26. Officially signed June 2. 6 The last battle of the American Civil War was the Battle of Palmetto Ranch in Texas on May 12 and 13. The last significant Confederate active force to surrender was the Confederate Allied Cherokee Brigadier General Standwater and his Indian soldiers on June 23. The last Confederate surrender occurred on November 6, 1865, when the Confederate warship CSS Shenandoah surrendered at Liverpool, England. 7 President Johnson formally declared the end of the war on August 20, 1866.